This is the CreaseCast.
Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, everybody. Welcome to the CreaseCast episode 164. We hope you all had a very merry, happy holidays. It's your boys. It's Lachlan. It's Sea-Dog. Back at it again in the white vans, ready to talk. Not really hockey. Kind of hockey. We don't really have much to talk about, because at least Canucks related, because nothing's really happening. Alex Chiasson missed practices because he had COVID, or he tested positive with one of the rapid tests. But that's it. That's all we got.
That's mostly what's going on right now, is just dealing with the COVID situation. I mean, there's the taxi squad thing. That's happening again, which, I mean, frankly, that was a long time coming. I'm writing an article on that for Canucks Army, talking about that and how, like, I'll say this, like, last year with the taxi squad and everything, it was helpful for the Canucks for sure, especially with how many injuries they dealt with. But man, did some players get the shaft.
Some players got the shaft on the taxi squad last year. I'm sure if somebody took the time to actually go through everyone's taxi squads, you could find some guys that face similar circumstances like the Canucks did. Yeah, but it felt like the Canucks had, like, every person that went on their taxi squad basically had their season just ruined and burned a lot of bridges. Brogan Rafferty, for example, played a single game and then sat on the taxi squad the entire year. When he came up for renewal, he didn't even bother negotiating with the Canucks. He just fucked off and took the first offer he could get elsewhere in the league. You had Michael DiPietro waste an entire year of his ELC, and now he's playing quite poorly for the Abbotsford Canucks this year. Are they related? Tough to say, but it isn't. Obviously,
it didn't help.
It didn't help, and obviously having a 21, 22-year-old goaltender playing games is a lot better than having him sit on practice duty. That was just like a gross miscalculation by the management of the previous regime.
But this year, it never gets old saying that, does it? Previous regime.
It does feel good, but it also feels weird because it's like Stockholm syndrome. Like, you're used to talking about them in the present tense, because for so long it felt it would never become the past tense with them. But here we are. They are the past tense, thank God. Hopefully the dinosaur himself, Jim Rutherford, doesn't make the same mistakes as the last regime did. We should hopefully see someone like Spencer Martin called up to the taxi squad. But first things first, the actual rules of the taxi squad were changed this year to prevent situations like Brogan Rafferty or Michael DiPietro getting their seasons completely canned. They made it so players could only be on the taxi squad for a maximum of 20 days, which is a pretty interesting rule. I wonder if that came from the NHLPA, where they're like, we don't want our guys wasting their time and getting shafted with a crappy paycheck, because when you're on the taxi squad, you're getting paid an AHL salary. So if you're getting called up from the minors, you're not playing, but you're also not getting more money to have your season wasted. You're getting paid to not do anything, but obviously they'd rather play first off, and they'd probably like to do it on an NHL dime. So this is, I guess, the best compromise they could come up with to make sure guys are either getting reps at the NHL or AHL level, or at the very least getting some compensation down the road where they know they're going to have a potential for higher earnings than what they are just by, doing nothing, sitting on a practice squad.
The taxi squad rules, now what's also interesting of that, so they say about 20 days, I think it's the 20-day mark, but they also say in there that after each club's final game before the All-Star break, the taxi squad will dissolve again. So essentially it's only there, so really it's only there for about 2 months. So in theory you could kind of get a decent amount. And it's also 20, I believe is it 20 consecutive days, or is it 20 in total? Because as I'm quickly scrolling through the list, 20 cumulative days. Okay, so you can only be up there for a certain amount of time, so that does help that for sure. The other thing that I will say, so this year the Canucks are in a way they're in a better position than they were last year. And that's not necessarily because they have more options. Like you and I both know, the Abbotsford Canucks are kind of hurting right now. They're not exactly stacked with rostered talent at the moment. A lot of injuries and some just the depth's not there like it looked like it was going to be. And that definitely throws a wrench into things. But the big difference is from this year to last year is that because the Canucks no longer have to send AHL guys to Utica, they can actually say paper taxi squad guys down, I do believe, send them back down to the AHL if they're on the taxi squad for a day to play a game and then come back up. Like, I think that is possible. I believe that's how it works. Because in theory, technically, you're not on the NHL. When you're on a taxi squad team, it's like you're an AHL guy essentially. Because again, you're getting paid the AHL contract. You have to go through waivers to get on the taxi squad. So I do believe they can assign you from the taxi squad back to your AHL team, provided that you are close enough for them to do that and get you into a game, which is why Mikey DiPietro got hung out to dry all of last year. So in theory, you could take your best players here if you want to, in a situation where it's like, okay, we're not playing. We're not playing in for another couple days. And we have the Abbotsford team has 2 games against Bakersfield at home, so we're going to paper them all down so they can play in that game and then come back up, which is a luxury that a lot of other teams last year did have at their disposal because their teams were a lot closer to their AHL teams are a lot closer to where they play. Like in some cases, like Winnipeg who was in the North Division with the Canucks, and San Jose, their AHL team plays in the same building. So it's a case of, oh, okay, just go take your bag down the hall. You're in the other team again. You're with the other team again now. The Canucks are in a spot more like where the Marlies were at with the Leafs last year, where they don't play in the same building, but they play within a decent, a short car ride away, so that they don't have to, and that so they can be on both. They can have their cake and eat it too a little bit here.
Yeah, and last year especially was like brutal because I think the Canucks were like one of the few teams that didn't bring their AHL club to the North Division when they had the option to. Which was really strange in hindsight because it was like there was going to be an all Canadian division. You could just fly with the NHL club to different cities and then arrange the AHL schedule around the NHL club schedule. Like it would have made perfect sense and you would have had guys at your disposal at all times. And instead they just kind of parked everybody in the AHL until the season blew up. And we saw it last year with when it was Jonah Gadjevich got called up. And they called him up. He flew to Winnipeg ahead of time. He had to quarantine for 2 weeks or whatever it was in the hotel. Then they finally get him ready for game action. Travis Green doesn't have a contract yet. So instead of playing the kid, he scratches him. So he basically sat in a hotel for 2 weeks on the assumption that he might actually get into an NHL game. And it never happened. Like, another sign of a management team and coaching team that were clearly not on the same page and resulted in a bunch of poor communication, burnt bridges, and terrible relationship building with players. Like, you want to create a toxic environment for your players who just don't I have
do stuff like that
with my work, and I don't get paid millions of dollars, but I show up anyway because I kind of have to. And then these guys, they're locked into their contracts. Like the only way they're getting out is if they ask for a trade. And anytime they do that, they get a black mark on their record that basically means they're out of the league.
Locker room problem. Yeah.
You have attitude issues. He's a locker room cancer. Like I was, what was I Googling the other day? I was Twitter searching, I don't know what it was, but it was a tweet of mine from 2017 or 2017 or 2016. And it was, is exactly when PK Subban got traded from Montreal to Nashville. And it was 4 months after he committed $25 million to a Montreal Children's Hospital. And then they traded him and were he has issues. He's a locker room issue and he's a bad character guy. And it was the guy that just donated 30% of his salary to a bunch of sick kids. Are you kidding?
There's a wing named after him in a hospital. What
that
guy? You might as well have been this this man who nurses puppies back to health is a locker room problem. Like
It's like
what?
you know what I think of is like it's
Oh,
not quite the same, but it's that Simpsons thing where they go to the veterinarian and he's
uh,
performing like mouth to mouth on a gerbil, and he's like trying to save it. He's like, "Doctor, he's gone." He's like, "This is the part of the job I hate." And he just picks it up and he throws it in the dumpster. Like that's NHL execs when they're talking about players. Like they'll try to
yeah.
resuscitate their careers and pretend that they're they care as much as possible until the very last second when it's just like, fuck these people, they're objects to us. We don't care about their personal lives or anything. We
Oh,
just want to
it
make
is.
ourselves look smart. So yeah,
It's a rough life. I would love to which is why again it's nice to see at least like there's a little bit better communication. There's not going to be as much cases of players being treated like that so far, at least under the new group we've got now. Cuz like yeah, again, like the whole 2 weeks thing only to be scratched, like that's got to be that's got to whether or not it's actually like it's not, I'm sure it wasn't
that's
done
like
with malice intent, but it's one of those things where if you're a player and that happens to you, you're like
that's
it
like
feels
psychological
personal.
torture. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is, because it's like
Yeah.
I'm sure when they were like, we're going to call you up. If you fly ahead of time 2 weeks, you'll be able to get into game action right away from Manitoba. It won't be like flying to Vancouver. Then you fly out again to join us. Like, we're going to be ready to go. We'll send you everything you need so that you're game ready and you don't lose any, like, muscle wear or, fitness levels or whatever. And after your 2 weeks, you're probably telling yourself the entire time, every day, like, just got to grit through this. I need to tough it out. This really sucks. I'm really bored, but I'm going to hang in there because this is my dream to get into the NHL game. They're doing everything to
Ugh.
make sure I can get in it. And then it
And
finally comes. They're like, yeah, you're scratched.
you're
Like,
basically in like
oh,
you're like yeah, it's not good. Like it's just a whole it was not a good look, which is why this year it's a lot easier. It's a lot better.
yeah.
The team is in Abbotsford. It's
Respect to the negotiators who figured out that taxi squads are a terrible idea. And there needs to be a lot of stipulations to make sure that the players themselves don't get screwed
yeah,
by
cuz
being parked on it.
yeah, because it is a weird because like on one hand, it's a good idea. Like in
Yeah.
theory, the taxi squad is actually a really, really good idea. It does make sense to have a larger group of healthy scratches essentially
Hmm.
practicing with your team at all times and being able to kind of rotate between those guys if you have
Yeah, like an
the
NFL
skill.
practice squad kind of thing,
Yeah, a
right?
little
Where you
bit.
basically have like a whole team complement
Yeah.
at your disposable or at your
Yeah.
disposal if you really need it. Like
Yeah.
that's a
Only
good idea.
Yeah, and made even better by the fact that it's a guaranteed contract, so you can't just get booted mid-season,
Yeah.
by a team that decides they don't want you anymore.
Hmm.
But yeah, the big problem is last year, a lot of players got kind of stuck in this weird purgatory where they couldn't play NHL games, but they also couldn't play AHL games because the team
Yeah.
wasn't close enough by. So it was kind of a weird, like it was just a sucky
Yeah.
situation to be in if you're one of those guys because and especially yeah in the cases of like goaltenders who if you're a third string goaltender, the odds on you getting into any games are already pretty low.
Hmm.
um yeah, and of course in the case of like yeah like Mikey DiPietro, I think thankfully to a degree Mikey DiPietro was one of the rare cases, like it
He
didn't
was like,
happen like that to a lot of guys.
that's why it should have been like a fireable offense that after 2 months of the season, he still hadn't played games or been sent
and
to
they
the
had
AHL.
and they hadn't
Like
traded for a goaltender
they
to take
hadn't
his
gone out of their
spot.
way to like just trade anything, like trade
Future literally,
who
you
is that
probably could have
who
gotten a cheap a cheap
yeah.
AHL guy for future considerations and called it a day. Like you
Yeah,
really could have. You
if
could
they're
have.
going on an AHL set, like last year was the same thing. They were on the AHL salary while on the taxi squad. So all you had to do was sign some guy from the ECHL. Just park him there. And he's making 60 grand a year to just be a practice tandy. And that is completely fine. They were too cheap to even do that.
If you have
And
an
that is
injury,
pathetic.
call up. Then just call up DPHO like
Yeah.
normal. Then just call him up.
Straight through, straight up, call him straight up
Just
to the NHL, bypass the taxi squad. Made no
call him up on the.
sense.
Yeah,
I'm sure when the news came out over the holidays, Mikey's having his Christmas feast with his family, and they're like, taxi squads are coming back, and he was like, no.
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 Now, so here's my question for you. You've already talked about that DiPietro hasn't been playing necessarily up to like the level we know he's capable of this year. He's had his moments, but he hasn't been as good. Do you see a situation where he ends up as their taxi squad goalie this time around, or do you think again?
I still think it's Spencer Martin just because Ian Clark is probably going to be like, it makes more sense to have Martin sitting for 20 days first so that DiPietro and Seelovs can get as many reps as possible over the next couple months because they need games. Martin started the last like 5 or 6 of 9 games or something like that. Like it makes no sense. So I'm sure they're looking at it like they can afford to park Martin for at least close to 3 of the 6 or 7 weeks that taxi squads are going to be available to NHL teams. And then, like we were saying earlier, if there really was like, Halak goes down with injury or Demko, God forbid, goes down with injury, like you can probably call up Spencer Martin for spot duty. Like he's not great, but like, I mean, we've seen crazier goaltending performances, so it's not like the end of the world. But
and even you can call up DiPietro to be the backup if you want to in that case anyway, because again, since they're
and he has
in Canada now,
waivers, so
he's waivers exempt and there's no quarantine, so you don't have to because they're in Canada, so you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You can very quickly get a different goaltender up if that's the route you want to go.
Yeah, and if there was, if say an injury to the goaltenders happened while they were on a road trip in the States, then you have to put in Martin, but it's like, okay, whatever. Shit happens.
And that's already banking on the idea that that you lose both your goaltenders in a stretch, like which knock on wood, hopefully won't happen to the Canucks this year, because that would be that'd be a season killer right out the gate.
Well, to be fair, like the season was already pretty much killed in the first few weeks, right? Like they're already behind the 8 ball, right? So if like both both the goalies going down though shouldn't be like that detrimental to a team that isn't. Yeah, like I still don't expect them to go that far because they need everything to go right for them to go on a run and to make up ground on the people that are ahead of them and behind them. Because remember, they have tons of games in hand on a lot of the teams in the Pacific and Western Conference. So for them, everything needs to shake out perfectly. So at this point, if both goalies did go down with injury in the States and they needed to play Spencer Martin, it was kind of like a situation of, well, it doesn't really matter because you guys were so far behind it and needed everything to go right anyway that you're kind of banking on miracles at this point anyway. So Spencer Martin coming in and, backstopping you to a victory is just another miracle that they kind of need to actually have a playoff chance or playoff hopes this year.
Yeah. The Canucks are like one of the nice things about the fact that the Canucks have made the managerial change when they did is that like even if the team the team's come out red hot since that happened, which is great. But let's say that being realistic, let's say that momentum doesn't turn into a playoff spot and it just ends up kind of being more of the same, especially now since they've been on layoff essentially for the last 2 weeks again. Like the odds on them on that momentum still being there is pretty slim to none. They might come more rested. That might play in, but either way, let's just say that for all intents and purposes, the Canucks end up kind of in the same spot where they are now, where it's like second to last in Pacific. You're in a spot now because of the changes you made already. You're at the spot where you're kind of playing with house money. Essentially, there is no real expectations on how good you need to be for the rest of the year to call the rest of the season a success. Like it would be a case of they'd have to somehow get worse than they played at the beginning of the year and for it to be considered an abject failure again. They're at a spot now where it's like we can kind of look at anything to take out of the rest of the season as a good year. You can kind of see this as building blocks for the future. And again, right now, the Canucks are kind of in a spot where they're not entirely like out of the conversation. Like the Oilers only are 6 points ahead of them with 2 games in hand. Like that's a lot. Like that's definitely a margin.
Yeah.
It's definitely a margin, but it's not an insurmountable one. Especially if you've been watching how the Oilers have been playing of late, or they had been playing of late. They were not only
Didn't
were
they
they
have a
not looking
jersey
good.
thrown on the ice?
Oh my! Did we talk about I don't know if we talked about this fully. I think we kind of briefly touched on it. There was the whole thing where, like, there was a jersey thrown on the ice at an Oilers game. I believe they had lost something. Like they had lost. Like, to be
They'd
fair,
lost
they had
like
lost.
6 of their last 10 or something like
Yeah,
that, or
it was
7 of the
not
last
looking.
10.
It was not looking good. And then I was like, that's like, oh God, they're trying to get everybody fired. Like, oh, okay, like a little weird. Also weird that they're throwing it in the middle of the play. Don't do that. Like that should be rule number 1. Like, I am all for
Wait for the break.
fan protest. Please never throw it when people are on the ice. That's how you can hurt a player or hurt a referee or something like that. Like, you
Or
can get
hurt
somebody
their feelings.
or hurt their feeling. You will hurt the alumni's feelings. How dare you not think about what Fernando Pisani he's going to see that, and he's going to be so upset.
He's
Like,
gonna take his eyes
God.
off of his checking account, his bank account, and he's gonna go, huh, that sucks, and then go back to counting his money.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
devastating.
I wonder
for
what
him.
he's doing. He was a God. That guy, talk about to be like, let's be honest though, like Fernando Pisani, one of the great playoff legends of all time.
Yeah,
I
for
think.
sure.
Like, had that one
had, like-
fantastic 06 playoffs. He was so good. Like,
Yeah,
just incredible.
Here, I'm looking it up right now. I know he
I'm
had like that.
Yeah.
He had the one playoffs where he was like a point per game player, and then, like, that
Yeah.
was it. It was like
He was-
unbelievable.
he was
yeah,
ridiculous.
14 goals in 24 games for the Oilers. One run against Carolina that they lost, which is just so funny. Oh, okay. It says he's the development coach for the Edmonton Oil Kings and has been since 2016.
Oh, get out. Good
So
for him. Good for Fernando. The Oilers have been losing a lot of games. It was tough. And then I was like, then I realized that they threw this jersey. And I think we talked about this in our DMs. Like, they did this during a game where Dave Tippett was on COVID protocol, so he wasn't even coaching, and he hadn't been coaching for like a few games.
He'd missed the previous game too. Yeah,
and it was like, wait, you're protesting to get rid of management in the middle of while they're sick and not even doing anything?
Yeah,
what
that's
is
ruthless.
wrong with you?
Canucks fans at least waited for them to be fully healthy and not dealing with COVID to fly a banner that says they should be fired. There was a lot of
in the playoffs.
There was a lot of complaints and issues with the Canucks. Some Canucks fans flying a banner that says "Fire Benning" or "Sell the team" or whatever it was. I think it was Aquilini out or something. There was 2 of them.
Was there another one? I don't know. I don't remember.
There was at least one of them. I know that, but that came like in May when there was like no hockey. It made no sense. So it was the time. It was like June. It made no sense. It was like the timing was completely off.
It was one of those maybe you should have either done this earlier or you should have waited until a good moment to do it. Like, don't just do it for the sake of doing it.
I remember now. It happened during the stretch of games after they returned from the COVID outbreak and started winning and cratered their chances at a higher draft pick by winning a bunch of games in a meaningless stretch where they were playing while the playoffs were happening. And so the timing looked bad because it was like you're cheering on, you're winning, and
they're doing the good thing.
The timing would have been like obviously before the COVID outbreak happened, like maybe in the first few weeks when it was clearly just the team sucked.
I'm not about, it's like one of those, like, we're not about to dunk on guys who literally just came back from a massive illness,
trying their hardest,
who are trying their hardest and winning games out of it. I'm not about, I wouldn't be me. I'm not going to go out there and dunk on them for doing a good job. Like, good for them. They're doing well. That was weird. Yeah. And
but
then
throwing a jersey while they were obviously in a bit of a rough stretch, but this is obviously McDavid and Draisaitl putting on a show this entire season of who can get to 50 goals in 50 games first, kind of. And to throw a jersey because you're having a little bit of a setback in the middle of a quality run by your team that's struggled for the last 10 years. It's a bit it's a bit of an overreaction, don't you think?
I mean, the Oilers didn't look all that happy too. I don't know if you saw the photo of like McDavid on the bench during I think their last game was against the Leafs. I think that was like the last game before their COVID pause. No, because they won 2 games after that. So they have played since. They played let's see, I'm trying to go back here. They played Seattle once, and then they played the Jackets as well. But like that 5-1 loss to Toronto, like the body language of Connor McDavid was like, oh God, this guy doesn't really care. Like, it was one of those like things where you're like, oh, he doesn't seem to be all that. Like, it was something weird where it was just like he doesn't like
McDavid
it was one of those
looked
things
like he
where
didn't
it's like,
care.
it kind of looked like he was checked out. Like, it looked
Well,
like
to
he
be
was checked
fair,
out, and it was like,
have you heard him talk? Like he doesn't. He's the most like uninteresting human being on the fucking planet.
Yeah, but like on the ice, he's not. That's the one place where he's interesting. So
Yeah,
it's like
no,
one
but
of those
like
things where like when you see him look defeated and the whole Oilers bench looks defeated, that's actually been a calling card of the Oilers. Is they're a team that like when the going gets tough, they hide under the table. They're not good. Like they're very much the team that folds under a little bit of pressure. Not necessarily because they're not good players, simply because
they're so
it's
used
all
to
they
being
know.
failures.
It's all they know. Exactly. You went 10 years of being so bad that it does have a big effect on your franchise when your recent history is all losing, folding in a first round, losing. Like it really does do a number on your psyche as a group. And that was kind of the thing with Connor McDavid, where it was like one of those things where it's like, yeah, this looks like a guy who does not see an end in sight to actually being successful again. Like, yeah, the Oilers are a team that have fallen off the wheel. The wheels have fallen off a little bit. And again, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the Canucks catch them. It would take a lot for them to do it. But again, the Canucks are weirdly a team that for when the going gets tough for them, they actually like up until recently, like this season, it didn't go well for them. They definitely were a team that when something went wrong, everything started to go wrong, and you could clearly see them stop trying. Like the dejection would set in. But like over the course of like recent years, there have been a lot of cases where you'd be like, okay, this is kind of where it's gonna be, they're done here. And then they would magically show up out of nowhere and come back and win. Like, I mean, recently they did the whole thing where it was like they were down 3-0 to the Blue Jackets. And then not only did they win the game, they won the damn thing in regulation. Like they scored 4 unanswered and won.
It
and it
was
like
on the day of the
oh
week,
my
I
God.
guess.
Yeah, it depends on a little. You know what it is? Like, it depends on a little bit of just like the Canucks are a team that they are streaky, like in the sense of like that team when things are going well for them, you can see the confidence. You can see okay, we're not going to let this get to us. We're not going to let this affect how we play. We're going to keep doing what makes us successful, and it's going to win the day at the end of the day, at the end of the game. And that does really well for them, and they're really good at that when they're capable of it. And that's why it's been like under Bruce Boudreau, you've seen that a lot. Like you've seen a team that clearly feels like they're playing a lot better and doesn't feel like they're out of games anymore. Compare that to the first 20 games where anytime literally there were the multiple games where the Canucks would take 2 bad penalties late in the game while they're leading. And you could see the entire the team go, okay, well, we're done.
Pack it in, boys.
Yeah, straight up.
Talked about this we talked about this in the last episode, I think, when we were talking about basically how that comeback win of theirs felt like the first actual comeback they'd had, like maybe since before the Travis Green era. Like you just knew.
I'd say the playoffs. I'd say the bubble. Like I'd say since the bubble.
Well, they didn't really have comeback games in the bubble.
They had a few. There was I think the Blues had a 2-0 lead or like a 2-goal lead on them at one point. They clawed back, won it in OT on like game 2 of that series, like where it looked like, this is where the Blues are going to kind of take over.
I guess I don't even count that series because the Blues could not have cared less to be in that series. Like they just were completely checked out.
See, I disagree. I think the Blues were trying, and the Canucks.
I don't think they were at all. the
Because
Blues
the Blues,
looked
they beat the
like
Blues
they
multiple times
were.
during the regular season that year. They can't beat the Canucks. They cannot beat the Canucks. I think you'll
Yeah,
see it
and so
again
that
this
I
year.
think they knew that they were playing the Canucks, and they had already come off their giant COVID outbreak of their own. So they were like, "Fuck this, we're not gonna try." And it clearly showed on ice because they had nothing, and Binnington got embarrassed, which is funny. But like
Yeah,
regular
see, that
season
was
wise,
yeah.
the team would be down 2-0 by the second period, and you just knew it was over, or 3-0, and you knew it was over, no matter what period it was in. Um, and I think that even goes back to the like before Willie Desjardins. Like when was the last actual like comeback effort by the Canucks? Like it's been a losing culture for so long
I
that
mean,
that
there have
comeback
definitely
effort with
been.
Boudreaux felt like a significant momentum
Are
shift.
we talking season, like,
Like
over a
regular
stretch,
season,
or are we just talking a game? Because there've
just a
definitely
single
been a
game.
well, then, I mean, I would say there have definitely been a smattering of games in there where they've done that before. Like, I don't
I
know if
really
maybe
don't
to
think
that
so.
level where it's been a 3-0 hole early in the first period and they've come all the way back from that kind of a deal. But there have definitely been games in there where it looked like the Canucks were down and out, and they managed to work their way back into it over and chip their way back into it. I think like the 29th, like the year they made the playoffs, like that year, that group definitely had some games in there where they won a few. And even in the year with last year, in the gas leak year, like there were definitely a couple
Remember
games
the
in there
gas
where it's
leak,
like,
the
well, like,
gas leak
but
year might not be over.
I think it's over. It feels over to me. Like, at least in terms of, because again, the reason it was the gas leak year is because it felt like there was no end in sight. Now there actually does. Now there was an ending, so that was nice.
I guess
Um,
yeah, this COVID break where they've shut down the season does feel like a finite conclusion to the gas leak year,
yeah,
and now we're starting with like a new kind of gas
yeah. Oh God,
because
please
we
no.
got the COVID situation kicking up, we got Olympics canceled, we've
Yeah.
got nothing fun on the agenda for the players to really look forward to. All-Star break's probably going to get canceled as well.
You think so?
Um,
You think?
I
Well,
think they will because I think it's just going to be too risky to fly in players from all across Canada and the states into Las Vegas to play like a for fun tournament. I think there's so many like delays to the schedule as is that they're going to have to sacrifice everyone's week off and the Olympic break as well to reschedule the entire season.
I think here's just thinking like from an NHL standpoint, I think that they will look at the All-Star game and say this is our chance to recoup a little bit of money, especially because like with the new broadcast deals and everything, I don't think they want to let that. I'm sure there's some money involved if like in terms of if that game doesn't get played, that they have to like pay back to the network who paid for it, which I believe is ESPN in the States and Sportsnet obviously here.
Sure.
I think they'll look at that as like, okay, we have to at least play it, even if it's not in front of fans and we don't get any gate revenue out of it. We're gonna at least play it. Because like even like say the Winter Classic, right? Like that's coming up this week. That's gonna be on Saturday, and I don't see a chance in hell of them not playing that game. They've already got the rink like underway, built, going. They've already got the tickets sold. They're not gonna cancel that game because it's literally that's their night to get some money back, right? They're
I
some of
just wonder if
that big money back. And they canceled all of the Wild and Blues games, I think, up to that point, just to kind of like even more bridge the gap and make sure that there's no extra COVID outbreaks to worry about.
true. I just wonder if because the player base is so pissed off about not going to the Olympics, they might face like an outcry of, well, if you canceled the Olympics, how come we're doing the All-Star game? And rather than dealing with the negative blowback on PR, they might just put all their efforts in making sure they get a full 82 games out of the actual schedule instead.
No, I would be interested to see how that goes because I think now I guess we'll get into the Olympic stuff because we didn't talk about that. We talked about it, touched on it in the last show before Christmas,
Hmm.
but it wasn't official yet. I do think like a lot of players are upset to go, but from what I've seen personally, it does seem like they kind of get that this was the right call. Like, because like look at it, your options were either not go or go risk getting COVID in China and getting stuck there for 5 weeks. That is the quarantine period for any Olympian that gets contracts COVID, is you're stuck there for up to 5
Yeah.
weeks. And
Yeah,
that would and based on the rules, like with the NHL, that would be with no pay. So it was
yeah.
like, do you
And you kind of
really
screw
is
your
that
team over too.
right?
If that happened in like the final game of the Olympics, then you would be missing the next 5 weeks of the NHL regular season without pay,
Right.
and your team could have their season, I mean, completely implode. Say if the
If
team
Connor
missed,
McDavid gets COVID and the
yeah, if
Oilers
Connor
lose
McDavid gets COVID,
and Leon Draisaitl gets
if
like
John Gibson or Connor Hellebuck gets COVID, right? Like there goes Anaheim's hopes. There goes Winnipeg's hopes. If JT Miller and Connor Garland get it with Quinn Hughes, there goes the Canucks' hopes of a comeback effort
Thatcher Demko.
entirely,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah, they're like, yeah, it's a case of I think the players knew in this, like, that the only reason this got shut down was because Omicron has been coming back and everything. I think they know that it wasn't a case of like the NHL just kind of balking on their promise. It was more just about the, hey, this is actually not a good call right now because we're very worried about everybody getting sick
yeah,
and
I do,
sick
I
again.
do, I do understand that if like some of the players, like say Steven Stamkos or Sid Crosby, like they might be like, you know what, you guys did make a promise, and while I understand the quarantine risks are really shitty, you kind of promised us, and this was my last shot at Olympic gold. Like Steven Stamkos, once
Stamkos
again,
is the key one where because Crosby's got his medals, the Stamkos
yeah,
doesn't. He's
but
never got.
we were
He's never.
robbed of a Connor McDavid, Sid Crosby, Nathan McKinnon line,
Yeah,
which
that's the big
sucks
loss here.
so much. Like that's like
That's the
I'm
big loss.
completely on board with the whole like the COVID protocols are reasonable in the sense like, yeah, if a guy tests positive in China, he should quarantine before ever stepping foot on a plane to get to Canada. Like just
And
prevent the spread. Like that makes
and
complete sense.
and the
But
NHL not sending players is the right call to make
yeah, like
based
they
on
don't
that
make any money,
information,
they don't get any of the video rights, they get nothing out of it. It sucks for the brand.
especially international hockey. Yeah,
It's purely for fans of international best on best competition, which I am. I
me too.
love like the Vancouver Olympics for as much of a waste of money it was, and how it kind of ruined the Vancouver and BC real estate market. I don't really care. It was fucking awesome. The games there were so fun. Actual best on
Yeah.
best hockey. Even Sochi, we had like 20 people at our house, which feels weird to say in today's climate.
God, does I watch videos now, like, I'll watch YouTube videos of, like, the news or something, and I'll see, like, a crowd gathering, and I'll be like
You're like,
and
bro,
I'll have a split second of, "Oh, no, that's not good," and I'll be like, "Wait, no,
yeah.
this is 1995, there was no
I
COVID."
Well, I can't remember what I was watching the other day, but I was watching some movie where someone like shared a drink with someone, and
Oh,
a
yeah.
part of me was like, "Oh, you can't do that! What the fuck? Are
Like,
you crazy?" And I was like,
"Whoa!"
"Oh
Yeah,
wait, this is like a movie from 1995. Like it
yeah.
doesn't matter." So like, I have to recalibrate my brain to not be in pandemic mode when watching movies because there's so many like periods where like they're on a sky train and people are like just hanging around. There's like 50 people and they're like coughing out loud and they're spitting and you're just like, this is a germ nightmare. Like, how did
It's
this
weird
not happen before?
it's weird how even, like, some, like, natural disaster movies or, like, big disaster movies are essentially like, "Oh, I wish I was there," because they're all, like, gathering in large places. You're like, "Oh, that isn't that nice?"
All those people
Like
hanging out. That's so
hanging
nice.
out
Yeah.
as a tectonic plate opens up and creates a massive earthquake on the San Andreas fault line. Oh, but
Yeah.
look at them. They're
I,
all just having a good time and eating
but
food. Like
they're dying in a group and that's just
they're
beautiful. We love to see it.
and that's beautiful. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's poetry in a way. Like
It is like
like
poetry. It rhymes.
yeah.
But
But
yeah, just on the note of the Olympics, like I'm a big fan of Best on Best, and I really think this year would have been a great, kind of like a bridging of the gap between the 2005 to 2010 or 2020 era of hockey, like stars like the Malkins, Ovechkins, Crosby, like those stars would be giving way for like the new young blood, and I think we were going to get some really young Olympic rosters out of this one, and it sucks that we're not going to get it now. We're still gonna get. I mean, I say we are, but hopefully we get like a McDavid led Team Canada at some point in our lifetime. Maybe the next Olympics, maybe the one after. I don't know. Just someone in North America needs to host the Olympics locally, so it makes a lot more sense for the teams or the NHL to delay their season for the sake of Olympics. I just want the best on best, man. I want to see. Give me Quinn Hughes and is it Dougie Hamilton? Who's the American guy? Or who's the other one I'm thinking of? Jacob Slavin.
Dougie
I can't
Hamilton's
remember.
Canadian.
Okay, I'm thinking of some other.
It would be. Is it? Would it not be Cale Makar? No, he's
I get.
Canadian as well. Or he's
Oh
Canadian as
yeah,
well.
he's from Alberta. But anyway,
But
point
yeah,
is,
like
throw Quinn Hughes
World
on
Cup.
with another one of the best like young skating defensemen on the right side. Like see what he can really do with like an elite tandem, not like a fucking Travis Hamonic or a Luke Shen, but like a guy who's like actually like legitimately good at
Yeah.
NHL hockey.
Just going back to look at his options, Quinn Hughes could be with it could be with Jacob Slavin. He could be with Charlie McAvoy, John Carlson. Maybe you're on a power play, you put him with Adam Fox.
Could you imagine Hughes and John Carlson? That would just be so dirty.
So good. The American team low key might have been like they weren't going to be better than Canada. They weren't going to be better than Canada, but
I was definitely more interested in seeing what kind of lineup they were going to bring. And then we heard I think Rick Dollywall was reporting that both Elias Pettersson and Niels Hoglander were going to be pegged for the Swedish team.
Oh God, yeah. Like of course
which
they
is like, man.
Like Elias was a lock to make the team. Like whether recent
struggles or not,
or not, no, he was a lock to get on that team.
Like it's just a shame, man. Like there's a lot of kids like in their prime right now or just entering their prime who would have been like so dynamic on an Olympic roster, and just to see what they could do. It's just sucks. At least we have the World Juniors.
We have the World Juniors, and I actually wrote about that. Like I wrote about that for Canucks Army. I wrote about how it sucks that there are like so many like young Canuck, like not just for Canuck players who weren't going to get to go, but like Nikita Kucherov has never played in an Olympics. Like that seems like a crime. He's played in a World Cup, but he has never played in an Olympics, and that is wild when you consider how good Nikita Kucherov is. Maybe he wouldn't have gotten to play this year anyway because he's hurt, but like still.
But the option would have been on the table for him.
The option would have been on the table. There was the other article recently, I forget who wrote about it, but essentially they were talking about how during the summer, Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby, knowing that the Olympics were coming up, went and practiced together in somewhat like secretly. And apparently, like to the point where literally it's almost like a myth, because they were literally saying, like, the article was written like only a select few were there to see it, but apparently it was like the most fucking magical thing you could ever see. Like it was magic to witness.
So it's like the most depressing article to read of all
time. But it was
time.
like one of those things where it's like, oh my God, like think about that. Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby just passing to each other. Like it's about as close as we can get to Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux playing on a Canada Cup team. Like, it's like, oh my God, so good. Like that. And like, it was like things where they were talking about, like they were making passes where no one was there for a second. And then a split second later, there's Connor McDavid or Crosby picking up the puck. And it was like, it was almost like Sedinery on steroids kind of thing. Like, oh my God, imagine that.
I mean, that's fun, but you know who was also really fun? Lyndon Vey.
Lyndon Vey in the last.
Let me check out some other. Who was the Olympic roster?
Maxime Lapierre, I believe, played on that team.
All the guys from the DEL and the KHL getting together.
You know what? Like, I feel bad. Like saying anything about those guys because, like,
it's not their fault.
It's not their fault that they were the only option. And they did their best. Although I was like, when they lost to Germany in the semifinals, I was kind of like, I know you're not the best NHLer, like the best Canadian hockey players in the world right now, but I still kind of feel like you messed up, like you failed there.
Yeah, well, wasn't Willie D the coach too?
Oh my God, that's right. He was. I totally forgot. That's no wonder they lost. I totally forgot about that. Outcoached.
Those losers.
Outcoached by no wonder Lyndon Vey made the damn team.
The two top scorers for Canada at the last Olympics games were Maxime Neuraud for Canada, who is an undrafted player, who is certainly a skater, who plays for the the
EA Sports
NL
creative player.
ZSC Lions from the
The Zurich Lions. That's right.
yeah. So good for him. And then the second up was former Canuck Derek Roy.
Hell yeah, that's right. There were a lot of former Canucks on that
Yeah,
team. I
that's why
forgot
it was
about how
really
many
funny.
former Canucks. It was Raymond, Derek Roy, Vey, Lapierre. There were a lot. I think there were 5. I think there were like 5 of them, and they could have iced a power play unit just of former Canucks and seen how badly that went.
Troy Terry was on the team? What?
Oh, because he would have been a rookie at that point, so he would have been like not in the. He would have been like a junior
Oh,
player.
yeah.
Like, yeah,
What the fuck?
or was he playing college?
Yeah, he was
Because
playing in college, the NCAA.
there you go.
And I
There
guess he
you go.
wasn't signed to Anaheim
The
at that
college
point?
teams are the college teams are far more likely to send an Olympic guy rather
Yeah.
than the CHL teams are. I
Yeah,
don't think a
Mason
lot of
Raymond was playing.
I don't think a lot of junior of CHL guys or junior of regular junior guys were on that team.
It's literally just like it's former Canucks.
It's a lot. It's mostly European League guys because that's all they can really get. You can't get a lot of AHL guys. You can't get a lot of anyone else. So
That's
like
insane.
you take what you can get. I do want to ask the question, like, okay, World Cup of Hockey needs to come back for sure.
Yeah.
Like here's the thing. People were like really like harping on the World Cup at the time, like, and even in years since, people were like, oh, it was a gimmick. It was just a joke. Like, oh, look at the North American team and the team rest of Europe. But like, but then you ignore the fact that the actual hockey was really, really good. And it was like insanely fun.
And
like
very
the
competitive for some reason. Didn't they have like $1 million prize or something like that? For the
No,
players?
that's the All-Star game. That's the All-Star game. I think it was just a for bragging rights thing. I think it was, or like there may have been like some money out of it, but I think it would have been more than $1 million, especially for like
when you consider
like
they
they probably spilled some prize money. Like I would have to look it up, but there were like cases where it was like sweet. Like the best part of that tournament was like, I think a lot, if you ask a lot of people who watched the whole thing, was the overtime, the 3-on-3 OT between Sweden and Team North America, where it was just back and forth and back and forth. And it was just like crazy good scoring chances at both ends. You're literally listening to the announcers go like losing their mind. Like, oh, they stopped him again. Oh, the other way. Oh, they stopped him again. And then Nathan McKinnon scores on like the little toe drag triple deke, essentially right in front of Henrik Lundqvist. And it's just the most gorgeous goal you've ever seen to end it. And it's like one of those things where it was so not anticlimactic. Like it was a perfect goal to match that OT. And that whole tournament was so good. And it was good to the point where it was like teams who got eliminated, you were like, oh, it's unfair that they're not here. Like North America was one of the teams that got.
Yeah, like they picked like a few gimmicks that because obviously they don't have like a full complement of 23 skaters from Slovakia or Czech Republic or whatever.
They
were
like worried about the quality of competition, right?
Yeah, like the gimmicks though, like I think worked. Like the under 23 team or under 24 team or whatever it was. Like that's really fun. Team North America, just a fucking great idea. It's so stupid. It makes no sense, but it's such a great way to just be like, let's just throw a bunch of kids together and let them play. Like, why not?
I was dying to see what would happen when if they played Canada. Like I was so hoping for that game. Like whether that was going to come in the semis or in the final, I wanted that game so badly and I was going to root for North America in that game because I wanted to see them win, because Canada, like, yeah, they're the Goliath. They're going to win. They're the Death Star. They're the evil empire. You kind of, in a way, it's like, we're sorry, we have to root for these guys because we know how damn good they are. So with Team North America, you kind of get a little bit of both because you're like, okay, yes, they're Canadian players still. Half the team is still Canadian, but they're younger guys, younger, inexperienced guys. So if they come out here and kick the older Canadian team's ass, like, oh, that's fun. Like,
yeah, the stakes, like the results of that would be great because it'd be like, oh, maybe we do need to go younger for our Olympic Canada rosters, our Olympic USA rosters. Maybe we made a mistake not keeping these guys.
Maybe
on
trending
the Canadian
younger
team.
at the NHL level is a better way to go than keeping old vets around just for the sake of old vets. Like that, like the possibilities were endless out of that. But like, even so, like the tournament, like the 4 that you got out of that tournament, like Russia, Russia, Canada, team rest of Europe, who looked like they were going to not do very well in the in the exhibition games, and then Leon Draisaitl came out of like that was Leon Draisaitl's coming out party a little bit. Like he was that good. He was really good in that tournament. For them, and they managed to get themselves all the way to the final. Sweden was obviously really, really good the whole tournament as well. Like that was a good hockey tournament, and I am dying to see that come back. Like I would love to see that come back, expand it maybe out by 2 teams because of the loss of the Olympics. I would say keep Team North America and Team Europe, keep those 2 around, keep them around. Bring in the Czech Republic, or bring in
Sorry, I was wrong. They did have Czechia, so Czech Republic as
that's right.
one of the teams.
The Czechs were there. Sorry, bring in the Slovaks. Bring the Slovaks in there.
Yeah,
I think
if you can, I don't know if they'd have enough players unless they did the thing where they expanded the pool to not just be NHLers but include the AHL as well. Like then I really think you could spice it up by like having just like a broader player pool available to you instead of just being like only NHLers, because then you'll run into the Team Europe situation.
Yeah, even if because even Team Europe is great for like the sense of like, maybe bringing in say a full German national team isn't going to go super well, but you still want Leon Draisaitl, and maybe the Austrian national team doesn't have enough guys to field a good competitive group against a full NHL roster, but you do want Nikolai Ehlers. So the Team Europe thing works is a good idea in a nutshell. That works really well. So if you can find a way to like bring in maybe 2 more regular national teams, like say, I would say probably Slovakia is probably your best bet. Or I'd have to look at like the IIHF rankings right now of like who's the best in the world right now. I believe Norway might be kind of up there, interestingly enough. But if you look at those, and then you say, okay, we're going to also keep Team North America and Team Europe. Or if you can only keep one, maybe it's the less fun option, but you give the younger guys a chance to go play for Canada and the USA again, and then keep Team Rest of Europe, so you can get those guys, those star players who might not have enough team talent to go on the regular national teams again. Do that. It would be so much better and so much more competitive.
I'm looking at it right now, and so the NHL has 364 players from Canada, 220 from US, 84 from Sweden, 45 from Finland, 43 from Russia, 28 from Czechia, and then the next highest would be Switzerland with 12.
Okay, then Switzerland. Then you send Switzerland to go.
So you get Switzerland, and you expand it to be like this is what I've always liked about like the European leagues, where they have like the Champions League, where like the best teams from each league face off like the Memorial Cup style, right? Like I love the Memorial Cup, where it's just like the winners of all the CHL leagues get together for a tournament to determine who's the best in the region. That's awesome. So I would love it if the NHL somehow like worked with some of these smaller leagues like the NL in Switzerland to be like, hey, we're going to platform your league here by you sending your best players to play for the World Cup. Like, why would any smaller league in Europe turn that down, where it's free advertising? Just take what they know from the Olympic deal and be like, we're going to make it so it's actually beneficial to the other leagues. So we're not going to withhold the video rights. We're not going to withhold clips or like the rights to any of the video. Like you can use it all to promote your own brand by saying, look, our guys can compete with NHL hockey, and that's going to grow their game. It's going to grow the NHL's game. So do something like that, right?
Yeah.
That would be great. Just expand the pool and open it up.
Yeah. Looking at the rankings right now, interestingly enough, so here, let me see if you know this, if you're not looking at the world rankings right now. Okay, so obviously number 1 is Canada right now. Number 2 is Finland, which is actually kind of interesting. I'm surprised they're that high. Number 3, Russia. Number 4, the US. Who is in number 5 right now?
Sorry, go through 1 to 4 again.
Okay, 1
Canada,
through 4. Canada, Finland, Russia, US.
Oh, then 5 would be the Sweden then?
The answer is Germany.
Really? I guess because
Yeah,
of the
which I believe
Olympic.
is buoyed, yes, by the silver medal from the Olympics. 'Cause I believe the way the world rankings work is essentially it's where did you finish in in these
In the
particular
most
events?
recent like major event. And then I
Yeah,
guess
it's I believe
Germany also their U20 group made it to the quarterfinals in the World Juniors last year, so that probably
yeah.
plays into it too, I'm guessing.
I think it
Or or no,
I think technically that's different because they're talking about the pro team, like the pro national squad, unless I'm
yeah, you know what?
mistaken. I believe it's
I think
just
this
those.
all has to do with the World Cup.
Yeah, I think it's just I think what yeah, it takes into consideration all the World Hockey Championships and then the Olympics. I think it just takes those two events in or and then like any of the like the lower tier versions unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, here.
Because that
Because
would have that
the
cuz
World
obviously
Championships was the one that
that one's every
Troy
year.
Stetcher won with
Yeah.
Canada with his
Yeah.
ridiculous goal.
Andrew Mangiapane being tournament MVP, I think, was the big one out of there.
Yes,
And then,
correct.
so yeah, maybe you send to Germany. Switzerland is an eighth, is an eighth, and then you got Slovakia, Latvia, Norway, kind of in that in that lower group. So yeah, like, hey, if Germany's number 5, send them in, or I have two other ideas. I have two ideas on how they can kind of more legitimize that, kind of in the same vein of talking about like getting the other leagues to kind of buy in, like
Mhm.
leagues or international leagues to buy in. If you want to make it more like, obviously, if you want to make this kind of like your version essentially of like the FIFA World Cup, if you're trying to make it more legitimate and you're trying to make it like treated in that same in that same vein, the way that the Olympic tournament is for hockey now, make it a make a European qualifier. Like set up a European qualifying tournament
Mhm.
in the summer maybe, or maybe during over the course of the year, leading up to the World
Or like
Cup.
when the World Champion or the World Cup was when they did it in September, like before the season had started. Like same
Yeah,
idea, like just a quick tournament
yeah.
in
Do it
Europe
just between
between
just
whoever.
like Switzerland, Germany. Maybe you throw in some NHL competition in there just to like smooth it, just to like give them like some real competition to stack up against. You go with like
Yeah.
Sweden, you give them Sweden and Finland maybe or something, who are already like qualified and grandfathered in, and just see and then say, okay, top 2 teams not already in the tournament, you're in. You get into.
Mhm.
So top 4 finishers win or something, get in, sort of thing. And
Yeah, that'd
then
be pretty dope.
see who, and then the rest will get sent to Team Rest of Europe, and then see how that shakes out. The other thing that I would like to throw in there, and this kind of ties into the IHF and the way that they run things, do the World Cup of hockey and then run a women's tournament at the same time. Run both. Either run both at the same
That's
time or run
whoa.
the women's
Whoa.
tournament after. Like
That
one or
sounds
the
like a lot.
that sounds
Okay.
like
Women
and
are not safe to COVID, but men are, and that's why we need to cancel all tournaments,
Jesus
including female
Christ.
tournaments, except for the World
Dumbest
Juniors for
dumbest thing in
men.
the world. Good lord. That is I hate that. Like I hate that so much. This idea
Yeah.
like it's so hip like it's so hypocritical that the IHF was like, "Okay, we're going to cancel this women's tournament for the second year in a row, but the World Juniors can keep
Yeah,
going."
and we're gonna announce it while we're currently
Literally a
running
day
a men's tournament.
the day before we're gonna do this. It's like, interesting how the tournament that makes you a lot more money is the one that you're gonna keep running, but the ones
Yeah,
that are just about developing women's hockey for the long-term future and making it more successful so it too can make money, you don't want to do.
a
Interesting how that turned out.
and
Like,
did you see
good
that
lord, it's
video
awful.
too? You see the video of, like, the women's tournament broadcast quality, and it's, like, a doorbell camera where it's, like, 500 feet in the back of the arena, no camera movement, just looking at the rink head on. It's, like, got a bubble filter effect on it. It's just
It's a
the
GoPro.
worst
They
shit. It's
strapped a
so
GoPro to the
bad.
top of the arena roof and then called and we're like, "Yep, our work here is done." It's terrible.
I know.
Like
I
especially when
wish I, like, really wish that the World Junior tournament ran concurrently the men's and the women's at the same time and played them both, like,
yeah.
in Edmonton Red Deer. I don't
Yeah,
see why
tie 'em
not.
together.
And it would
That
be
would be
fun
the
as shit.
smartest thing to do. That would be the smartest thing to do because then you could also, in theory, pack it as the IHF go to like your broadcasters or whatever who are paying for the rights to do this and be like, okay, we're gonna package these two together. You have to broadcast both. That is the rule. You have to. You can make a little bit the extra if you're worried about the revenue. Do it that way. And then with like the World Cup of Hockey, which is NHL run, this is your opportunity to say, hey, we actually care about growing the women's game. We're gonna put on a tournament between let's say the top 4 teams, and then we do a team rest of Europe essentially in that group too, kind of thing. Because that one in itself is a case where it's like, okay, maybe a Switzerland is gonna get shelled 10-1 essentially, whereas it's gonna be closer at the men's level right now. But
I think the NHL, if they're planning on growing the game, they can just straight up run the tournament themselves and be like, it's an open invite to all women's national teams
as many
to
as we can fit realistically.
if
do it.
if they can send, like, obviously some teams like say like the women's Slovakia team might be like, oh, we can't afford to send a team to the tournament. They bow out and it's only a 7-team tournament. Then you just do round robin style, top 4, then play in a small bracket. Like that's all you need to do. It doesn't need to be like Olympic style 8 teams or 16 or whatever. It doesn't need to be that complex.
You could even just make it like, honestly, like I'm even looking at a scenario where it's like it's more like I forget what the women's version is called, but there is a sort of like an Ivan Halinka tournament that's more for like pro women's. It's like the top 4 nations. So I think it's Canada, the States, Sweden, and Finland. It's just those 4. Gotcha. And then in theory, you could do that. Like do it that way where it's those 4 in a women's tournament. Plus you add in a rest of Europe to bring in the Swiss, the Russians, those women's team programs that haven't necessarily caught up yet. Put them to give them a more competitive group, and then run that at the same time. Either run that at the same time or run that like immediately after the men's group in the same buildings, in the same facilities. Do it up big. Do it like it's your own Olympics. Have an opening ceremony. Have it be fun. Get all the players out on the ice in the same spot together to take pictures and stuff, and do the whole thing. Treat it like they're both very much in the same pro group, because they are. And then award 2 championships. You could do that if in theory they decide they want to do this World Cup in, I guess the earliest they'd be able to do it is 2023, because they'd have to, because they don't have enough time to set it up for next September. That would be awesome. That would be really cool. Like there are lots of options of where you could put that tournament. That would make it great. Like if you don't want to put it in Canada again and you want to put it in the States, send it to California. Go send it out to Anaheim and LA. Put it there.
Send it to Vegas. Do whatever you can to grow the game. It's not that hard. And like you're saying,
damn fun.
If you're actually committing to growing the game of women's hockey, then actually prove it by doing stuff like promoting a women's tournament alongside your men's tournament, to be like, we care about both genders equally. We care about their sports equally. We're not just like doing this performatively. Like we actually do genuinely care.
And it'd be such good hockey too. Like imagine 2 weeks of professional international hockey in one city. Like I think you and I might be the group that like are like, all right, we're traveling. Let's go. We're going for 2 weeks to wherever this tournament is. Oh, you say it's in St. Paul, Minnesota in the dead of winter. You got it. Let's go.
Well,
there's an endless possibility of like places and options of where you could do that, and you could do it so big and in such a great way that the NHL would be crazy not to do it. Because again, it'd be solving the problem of robbing us of a Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby connection. It would get a women's tournament in front of the public eye at a grander scale in a way than the Olympics. Like that
they
would
owe
be
us big
huge.
time after that, though. Like for sure, for real. Like how
who?
dare they take that away from us?
Oh,
they
God.
take away the Cros, the McD,
Oh,
the
okay.
McKin. How dare they take that away from us? So they owe hockey fans with something like this. Give us something to
Big
look
time.
forward to.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, again, we're not really harping on the NHL for not sending the players, because again, it's the right decision to make. I would not feel comfortable about sending those players right now. I think it would be bad to send them. But
yeah, we completely understand it. It just like really sucks because like this was probably the last time.
you're going to have to follow through on guaranteeing them an international tournament to play in sooner than 2026 because
Yeah.
that's not early enough. Like, straight up.
Pretty much. We're going to have no one to cheer for at the next Olympics. Do you even know where the next Olympics is being held? The next winter one? Winter
I
Olympics
just looked this up. I think it's
2026?
in Italy. I think it's in
Oh,
Cortina
yeah.
d'Ampezzo.
Milano Cortina.
Yeah, it's
Mamma
in
mia.
which will actually be a very good which could be actually a very, very good
Well,
Olympics.
the last time the Olympics were in Italy,
Canada
Canada
sucked.
sucked, and nobody watched it because the time that the games played was like awful.
It was in a bit of it was in that awkward spot where
It was in that
either
like Sochi era, or like that
See, I
awkward
got
period
up
where it was
for
like
all those games.
3:30 in the morning or whatever.
I was getting up for Canada, Switzerland. Not the Torino games because I was like
Because you were
8.
4.
I was 8 at the time, yeah. But like
Yeah.
and then of course there'll be the 2030 games, which may or may not end up being in Vancouver again.
Oh God, I might be dead by then. So
I would hope not. We've got at least 10 more years of podcasting in us, at least. Well, 15 tops. 15
buddy, I
tops.
might not even care about hockey in fucking 2 years, let alone 10 years. Are you kidding me?
The
Are you
Canucks are gonna be
kidding?
good again. The Canucks are gonna be good again by that point. Don't you worry. I promise.
That's when I put down the Google spreadsheets and I just returned to being a fan, being a complete homer,
you
and tweeting at you pesky negative media.
You go full Thanos and just go
Yeah.
settle on your farm and overlook a gracious universe.
Yes, exactly.
Universe.
I watched that the other day, actually. I
Great
watched both
movie.
of them. I was very hungover after Christmas Eve and decided to crush through the Avengers movies. I have no idea why. I was just like, I'm gonna crush through Endgame
They're
and
good.
Infinity
They're
War.
such good rewatches. Like they're awesome rewatches.
Yeah, Infinity War holds up a bit better than Endgame. Endgame,
Really?
I think, is a bit too schmaltzy. Like it's too much of like Infinity War is like a really good movie with like a really good origin story for Thanos, like an actual
Thanos is a
villain
good
story.
villain.
Like it's basically his movie, and that's what makes it
Thanos was a
good.
successful villain. Hell yeah.
But Endgame is kind of like it's basically the producers like giving nods to their series and what they'd accomplished to get to that point instead of being like an actual movie. You know what I mean? It was a lot of just like remember this part of the movie, and I don't like that at all. Like that's why I really didn't like the last season of Mandalorian, because it was too much of remember this, huh? How fun is that? Remember this guy? I hate that. I love ingenuity, and there was none of that in Endgame, frankly, for me.
Weirdly, I was in the opposite camp. I actually liked Endgame more than I liked Infinity War, specifically.
Really?
Not because I agree with you. I loved Thanos' arc in that in Infinity War. He was actually like a good villain, like a really good villain. Marvel's biggest issue has been the fact that they just struggle with finding villains to stay. Like to stay over a course. It's always like a one movie villain, and then they're disposed of, and that's it, kind of thing. And Thanos actually was a very good villain that had repercussions lasting over the course of the entire series, so it made a lot more sense that way. And then Endgame, of course, had the feels at the end where I actually I don't cry at movies easy. I cried in that. I cried in Endgame. Like I'm very much not a movie crier.
When was the last time you rewatched it? When was the last time you rewatched it?
Last year. It would have been last year while I was still living in my old apartment, because I remember going through and watching all the Avengers movies in a row. So I watched all 4 directly, one after the other.
Because I remember in theaters, I remember thinking like it was a bit too like we're trying to get the audience to cry type shit. And then on rewatching it for the first time, this time I found it way more sad because there's such a clear definitive end to the Marvel Cinematic Universe with that movie. So you're just kind of like I don't know. I think once Robert Downey Jr. is like gone from the series, like I don't really find the series that interesting, because I don't think anyone else is really as fleshed out as his character was. Like the entire cinematic universe is practically fleshing out him
and Captain America, which was and of course Chris Evans also. left
I
after
could
that
care less
movie.
about Captain America.
I'm also
I
same.
I
I did not find him
I have
like
no
that's not
interest in him at
through no
all.
fault of Chris Evans, who I thought did a really good
Yeah,
job
he's
as Captain
fine.
America. It was just I don't find Captain
It
America the character interesting. I find him
You know
too
what?
vanilla. He's too
It's
vanilla.
like it's like it's like listening to Connor McDavid talk about hockey.
Yes,
You know what I
he's
mean? It's
too
like
goody
it's
two
the
shoes.
same thing. It's just like he's like the hockey man of like superheroes where he's just like, I am
Puck
by the
Cindy.
books. I am by the books except for Civil War when I am not by the books,
Yes. See, I
which
liked Captain
is
America
weird.
more in the later movies because he actually like I was like Mr. Vanilla gruesome chocolate chips, and I liked that aspect of his character that he got
And
a
then they
lot more
ditched it.
like he wasn't like, oh guys, we gotta play by the rules because
Yeah.
we're the Avengers. Like, no, he actually was like, okay, I'm gonna go rogue here. And I'm like,
That
okay, I respect you now. Good job. You've
That
done
is
it.
also like a very funny thing, like a guy whose nickname is basically like Captain Patriotism, and his whole arc in like the final like 4 movies is him being like, America sucks.
I love that. That
That
was
rocks.
great. That
That's
was
so
what
good.
like we this is I feel like we're probably so peel like back behind the curtain a little bit. Cody's on a break from work right now in terms of like they have the week off essentially before
Yes.
2022, which is awesome. I think we're going to end up doing some off the post episodes talking about Marvel, specifically about No Way Home. And God, I could spend hours talking about like the whole like there was the whole like people were talking about like how people were talking about like the idea like, oh, Marvel like glorifies the military, and that's like the hot take. And I'm like, actually, like I see where they're coming from, but I'm also like, actually, it kind of tells you that they're shit. And then a lot of the Marvel movies end with, hey, the army is crap, and they don't give a shit about you.
Like which movie exactly?
Like, no, they just say all of Marvel comics and Marvel movies
Oh.
are just glorifying the military. And I'm like, actually, they don't like some of them, like, yeah, they have that art, they have that angle for sure. But actually, quite a few of their most prominent ones are the
Well,
military is kind of the enemy in those
like the
ones. That's
characters we're
not
talking
a
about specifically, like Iron Man is basically like an antithesis to capitalism and the war machine. And
yeah,
then
Winter
Captain
Soldier.
America is basically
Winter
the
Soldier, he
the
goes rogue.
pro
Yeah.
war machine until he is not, which
Yeah.
is kind of interesting. But
That's a cool arc. Like, that's an interesting arc to go through. Same thing with like, and then you go through all the things like, well, if Shield is the police who's policing the police kind of thing, and that whole
Team
narrative
America,
takes in its whole Team America. The marionettes just show up. That's the next that's phase 5.
that
Um,
okay, like that's like I really like Intro into the Spider-Verse or whatever, like the animated movie. I would love for there to be a superhero marionette movie that is just like really stupid, like Team America style,
well,
makes no
that's what it
sense.
is it not? Like, is that not technically what it is? Like, it's a superhero movie.
Yeah, but like done by them with like so it's like a
Oh, you
marionette
want
of like Hulk or whatever. Like that would just be funny. It would make no sense, but it would be really funny.
it's just puppets. It's just it's the
It's
Muppet
like the
Avengers.
Muppet, yeah, it's the
I'd be
MCU,
down for that.
The Muppet Cinematic Universe.
The MCU. Yeah.
Yeah, the Muppet Cinematic Universe. It
The,
would be really funny.
we might need a different name. Yeah.
But
That
like
would actually be awesome. I would go nuts for that.
you hire Michael Caine to be some old guy,
Somebody
and
watched Muppet Christmas Carol. There you
all
go.
I did, and then all the superheroes are marionettes or Muppets, and Michael Caine is playing everything completely straight as like the president. Like that'd be great. It would make no sense. It'd be stupid, and it has to be a Christmas movie.
It has to be a Christmas movie.
And nuclear
They
warheads
do
have to be
more than
involved
Christmas
somehow.
movies. Wait until you watch like I don't know if you've seen the original Muppet movie from like the 80s. I
I've
forget what
seen
year it came out. It's
I've
so good.
seen obviously the Muppet Christmas Carol, and I've seen the Muppet Pirates of the Caribbean or whatever the fuck it's called.
Muppet Treasure Island. That one's
Sure.
okay. That one's
Yeah,
okay. That one's a
I've
little
only
bit on
seen
the
those
lower
two.
scale. Like,
I don't really care for the Muppets on their own, but I just
oh God,
remembered
my
liking
friend.
those two.
We're gonna change that. I feel like this is probably I think we've gone as far as we can with the show, have we not, with today? I feel like that's
I have a
good
feeling that
episode.
this is clearly a sign of how little hockey there is to talk about. Because if you guys don't know, there's like literally nothing to talk about. everything shut down, more
You'll know.
postponements coming. We all know this.
You're
this was
listening
just like
to
a
a hockey
refresher.
podcast.
We'll spare you the Muppet talk, the MCU, if you will.
For now.
This is the CreaseCast CU. So I don't know. Do you want to sign out here?
Yeah, let's sign this out. A couple quick notes to end us out on. One thing, again, we have a little bit of extra time right now. So one thing we're planning on doing is we're gonna do a live kind of like almost like a Twitter space, but not on. We're gonna do a watch along.
We're basically gonna do like what our live YouTube episode we did that one time, but we're gonna be doing it while watching the Canada Switzerland game or whatever one it is.
It's gonna be a little bit. It's gonna be like either I'm still figuring out the logistics. It's either gonna be on Twitch. Or it's going to be
Twitch chat's fun. Twitch
chat is very fun. So I think that might be the route we're going, or it's going to be like through Discord or something, like for our patrons, something like that. But we're planning to do it for a World Junior game. We're most likely Team Canada. We're going to pick a Canadian game. We'll let you know either tomorrow. Tomorrow probably we'll iron out what day we're going to do it on.
Let's pick a game no one's going to watch. Let's pick like Austria, Switzerland, or something.
Like 10 to 1. Oh God, no. Oh, God. Oh man, I don't want to watch that. And that's just kidding.
Players don't even want to watch
every World Juniors game. Every World Juniors game is fun to watch. I am firmly on that mindset that it's all good hockey. But we'll probably I think most likely it'll be a case of either like Canada, like Finland, which I think is on New Year's Eve, or like one of the earlier games, so like Canada, Austria, like something like that. But we're ironing that out, and we will put up a little post on the Twitter, so keep an eye out for that to go check that out. We might add some fun to it. We'll see. And then we're gonna do some off the posts. I think this week we might try and just do a backlog of off the posts that we can record, that we can put out like over the course of the next month or so. Like try and get them all done at once, something like that.
This is essentially an off the post if you really think about it. It's a free off the post.
It's a free. We talked about. We spent most of our show on hockey. Like out of the hour 15 we've been recording, we spent, I believe, 50 minutes on hockey. So we did okay. We did good. We did good today.
And 3 minutes of it was pretty good radio.
How dare you? It was all good. It was all good. Other than that, I have been Lachlan Irvin. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lach at the Crease. You can also find me on my writing work at Canucks Army. I have an article coming out tomorrow. I probably have an article probably coming out like one every single day this week. So keep an eye out for that. And make sure to go check us out on our Twitter at the Crease, twitter.com/the CreaseCast. Also check out our Instagram, our TikTok, and then our Twitch. Follow our Twitch just in case. And then go check us out on Patreon. $1 and $5 tiers. We're going to be doing some more content for. Actually, we're probably gonna backload some Patreon content this week, so we got out more for you guys. So go check that out as well. Cody, where can they find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter at Cody Sievertson. My website is ahlnucksharvest.com. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We hope you have a blessed new year, and we will catch you next time on the Flippity Flip. Bye, everybody.
Bye.